Welcome to the Introduction and History of Ag Laws and Regulations. So first I'm going to share the screen, and your job in this class is to listen to my lectures, review the PowerPoints, take notes on all of the lecture and PowerPoint material, and then upload a summary of this every week. And that way you're studying, you're reviewing, and you're using the summary papers to get a handle on the broad range of topics we cover in this class. Now, one thing I want you to be aware of is that ag laws and regulations are extremely similar but different than other laws and regulations. They all follow the same pattern. They all fall into the same categories. There's laws and regulations, as we will discuss, that affect all businesses. But when you dig into the details of laws and regulations, what you'll find is that there will be a law. And this is how you have to comply with the law, except for agriculture. Here's another law and what you need to do, except for agriculture. And this except for agriculture is something that is littered throughout all of the agriculture or all of the laws and regulations at the federal, state, and local levels. And that doesn't mean agriculture is getting a free pass, that there aren't few laws and regulations. It just means that they're different. The laws are the same in general for all businesses, but when it comes to making the specific rules for how to comply with that law, or the specific rules that apply to specific industries, agriculture is unique. You're outside dealing with the weather. You're not building a building or working inside of a building where you can dictate and control all kinds of details about your business. In most businesses, you're in a building and everything is more predictable, at least in the eyes of the law. And agriculture, you're outside. You're subject to weather in ways that you can't control. Yeah, if you're a roofing contractor, you're subject to weather, but it's really just, am I working today on that job outside, or am I going to have to do paperwork inside because it's raining? The weather doesn't impact you in the same way. The weather is what is making your product in most production agriculture. You're growing outside in the soil with nature and the weather being the input or one of the major inputs that makes the crop grow. And because of that, you're going to hear over and over and over again, except for agriculture. And the rules are a little different. So in this lecture, I want to keep in mind that there are so many different important historical topics, many of which that we go over will not be specific to agriculture, but that affect agriculture dramatically in one way or another. And so as we go through this first one could be really difficult to summarize. How do I summarize this particular PowerPoint? And one of the things I want you to keep in mind is if you go to the course content on Canvas, you go to the modules. And when you go into a specific module, it actually links you to pages. Don't worry about that. It's under modules, and I'll just go there. And it'll look a little different for you, but the very first week one is Introduction and History. Please read this. I'm not going to read it to you. This is important. This is something that could be on the midterms or the final. Keep that in mind. Read this. It talks about the history of laws and regulations in a way that I think can help you wrap your own mind around it and understand that the history of the United States really is walking arm in arm with the history of agriculture. The history of the United States largely is the history of agriculture. And that has changed to a certain extent. The Industrial Revolution and the technology and information revolutions of modern times take our minds away from agriculture and into something else, into these machines and factories and computers and information. But what is driving all of that? What is making all of that possible? We have to feed people. We have to clothe people with cotton. We have to build houses with wood. All of those things are happening that are the foundation of how we live. And agriculture is the foundation of how we live. And so if you look at the way this is organized, it is the foundation or framework of laws and regulations based on agriculture during the initial periods. By the 50s, we are certainly into a social change. We could call this the modern era. You might not think of it as modern by today's standards. We're quite a ways away from the 1950s, but it is a modern change in terms of social and civil rights and workers' rights. And that modern era changed the face of agriculture and agriculture laws dramatically. And then by the time we got to the 1980s and 90s, we were kind of massaging things and fixing things and bringing them up to date. And the differences in ag laws and regulations were not as dramatic in some ways. They were very dramatic in terms of the detail. But again, it continued with a lot of social, environmental, worker rights types of changes, especially in the 1970s. That was the era of environmentalism. So that's kind of a context, putting all of these things together in terms of major periods of history. So please review that, study that, and let's jump into the PowerPoint. So class is a combination of text, visuals, online reading, and research. Some quizzes are actually midterm exams and a final. And there will be a term paper. And I'm not going to read every slide. Your job is to hit pause when you need to, go through the PowerPoint as you need to. But we'll look at history and context of ag laws and regulations. We'll look at the actual content of that. What are the changes that have occurred in some of the significant laws and regulations that we must use in our day-to-day businesses, and how do we comply with them, or how do we follow the rules? The law says this is what must be done. The regulation is the detail of how you're supposed to do it. And then compliance is, as an individual business, what exactly are the specific steps I'm going to take to follow the rules? And then enforcement. What if somebody does follow the rules? What if they don't? How is it enforced or verified? How do you make sure that people and companies are following the rules? And scattered throughout, there will be sources, web pages for the most part, that you can use for further research. Now, there are a broad range of rules in ag: labor, safety, environmental, business law, intellectual property rights, and on and on. You'll see the full list as the course weeks open up with content and my lectures. And you can use this one PowerPoint with so many different topics and so many different laws in this very one introductory PowerPoint to get an idea of what you might want to do for your research paper, your topic paper, or your term paper, as it's often called. There is no textbook for this course, primarily because there's no such thing as an ag laws textbook that's any good, in my opinion. Very few textbooks on the subject at all, other than for law students. And that's way beyond what we want to do here. So there'll be a lot of things that I'll present in this course, summarized in my PowerPoints. Now, some of the information might appear out of date, and that's fine because laws and regulations change all the time. Part of your job to follow the rules, to be a good steward of laws and regulations, is to look up what is current. Because whatever you learn in this class might be completely outdated by the time you are in industry, by the time you finish here, you get your bachelor's degree, you get a job, you work your way up. Next thing you know, 10 years have passed. All the basic ideas, all the basic concepts will be the same. Some major things will change, but a lot of minor things, lots of minor things will undoubtedly change because the law is a living, breathing, growing, changing thing. Students are encouraged to think about the practical reasons to apply themselves in this course. Why do you want to put the effort into this course? Because it's important. You're going to use this information in your career, period, one way or another. Now, yeah, you have to get a grade and earn a degree. You're here to check a box. Okay, I need to take this ABT 58 class. I need a good grade. Check, I did it. But it goes well beyond that. People who understand laws and regulations and appreciate laws and regulations, know a little bit about how to look up what is important, they're more valuable to employers. You can move up in your career better if you really get it, appreciate it, understand it, and do it. And you've got your job to do. And it's important to make sure that not only you, or if you're in a supervisory capacity, your employees under you are following the rules properly and efficiently. The more you know, the better off you are. And as I said in the introductory course, I don't expect to teach you about all of the laws and regulations. I expect to teach you enough to appreciate it, to understand how it works, and to be able to be independent, to look up information on your own. So, all businesses, agriculture and other businesses, have laws and regulations. The laws and regulations keep getting broader and more complex over time. You need specialists to handle things. I think the easiest one to point a finger at right now is food safety. Food safety was a relatively minor afterthought when I started in agriculture. Yeah, you got to be safe, you got to be clean, you got to keep people from getting sick, whatever. But there wasn't much meat on the bones of the laws and regulations, what you had to do. Now it's a focus of many companies, a major focus, with specialists looking at the water, looking at the soil, looking at the harvest practices, looking at the trucks and trailers, and looking at everything. So it does get more and more complex with time. No matter what you're doing, there are going to be rules. And some people hate the rules, some people love the rules, but they're there for a purpose. And rather than falling into the trap of bitching about laws and regulations, and I have to comply with this. This is so stupid, and the government doesn't know what the hell they're doing. Well, yeah, occasionally, or perhaps frequently, there are things that come around as new regulatory things that we have to deal with. And it comes from people who really don't know what's happening. They don't understand agriculture. They don't understand how to implement something. Well, then maybe you need to go and talk at a meeting, go to Sacramento and talk and say, this doesn't make sense. We should be doing this. This is why we should be doing it differently. Get involved. I would argue that most of the laws and regulations that we have to deal with in agriculture, no matter how they start out, no matter how it takes some time to evolve, most of them do a pretty good job. And most of them are there for a really good reason: to protect workers, protect business interests, to protect the environment, and to make sure that there is some sort of fairness in the business environment. Most of them do a good job. And I think if you come at it with a positive attitude and you want to make things better, I think you'll be a valuable employee, and possibly you can be on the other side. I would love some of my students to go into the regulatory aspect, go into politics, go into law, and be somebody that's helping to form these, somebody who maybe has some experience in agriculture. So we'll go over the history, things that are going on now in the present, things that are perhaps coming down the pike in the future. Don't have a crystal ball, but have a pretty good idea of the trends of some things that we'll discuss as the need comes about in the coming weeks. The content of laws, compliance or following the rules, complying with the laws, and again, how to find information. So that's what we're after. So I'm going to take a quick break so I can break this lecture up into smaller pieces, and I'll be right back.